Yes, so the presentation was prepared by Klaus North from Wiesbaden Business School and myself, and I work for the Budapest Institute for Policy Analysis. But as you will notice, most of the material for this presentation has come from Klaus, but as a good knowledge manager, he has passed on a lot of information and knowledge to me, which I'm going to present to you and pass on to you. So to start with, let me sort of remind you or broaden your perspective about what knowledge is. In knowledge management, in the concept of knowledge management, we often use what we call the knowledge tree to show that knowledge is much broader and much more than technical knowledge, for example, about services or products in your organization, or even more than management knowledge within an organization. There is a grounding of knowledge in the organization constituted of mainly implicit knowledge, such as the culture, the values, the unwritten rules and norms of how an organization works, and informal networks between employees or between employees and clients. On top of this is what we call, or what usually we understand as knowledge, as I already mentioned, knowledge about services and products, or knowledge about your clients, and also the contextual knowledge, such as the legal and administrative background or basis for the working of the organization, and the knowledge about processes, etc. So it is important that when we talk about knowledge management, we mean the entirety of this body of knowledge symbolized in the knowledge tree. Now, moving on to the next slide, when you want to know more about knowledge management, PES experts are actually in a good position, because I assume all of you are familiar with the Common Assessment Framework, especially as the new excellence model of the bench learning exercise builds on this framework of CAF, and many European PES use this in their own organization, or have already used this in their own organizations. And CAF actually has a sub-criterion on managing information and knowledge, so you're familiar with the basics of what this constitutes. Including, I'm not going to go through all the 7 steps that you can see in the presentation, just to mention the main ones. It's all about acquiring, managing, storing, assessing information and knowledge, down to making sure that when somebody leaves the organization, the information and knowledge they had is retained within the organization. If you can move on to the next one, probably the more difficult part of the task is how to operationalize this framework and the 7 steps involved in the CAF framework. So how to take it to the operational level, and this would involve 3 main areas or 3 main actions. First, to create transparency in how you organize knowledge and information within the organization. Second, how to make it available to both to employees within the organization and to clients and partners outside the organization. And last, how to exchange and learn how to make use of this knowledge and information. And this has to be done both regarding information, knowledge, and competence within the organization. The matrix that you see in this slide give you a first inspiration on what sort of questions you need to be able to answer in your organization. But let me move on to the next slide, which shows you how. I'm not sure if all the some of the print may be too small, but don't worry, we'll be able to see this see the slides later on. So The task next is to apply this frame and the questions I just shown to specifically to the past and specifically to your particular past, considering the economic, socio-demographic, and legal environment, and your mandate and your strategy on how you want to develop your services and the internal organization, and how to and so the task is to how to arrive at or how to develop the learning organization. Moving on to the next slide. The current body of knowledge about knowledge management systems has already generated some information, some understanding of what challenges public sector organizations may face when they develop their knowledge management systems. Some of these challenges that you see summarized here very clearly apply to the PASS as well. Although the PASS may be, at least as my experience is, may be in a somewhat better position than the typical body of, can we move on or move back to the previous one? So the a typical ministry or a more bureaucratic part of government may be more open to or more exposed to some of these challenges mentioned here, but some of these would be directly relevant for the past, such as facing shortages of personnel or frequent turnover of staff, which makes it difficult for the organization to pass on knowledge between predecessor and successor, or in more general terms, just to pass on information between colleagues, as you have limited time for documentation and knowledge sharing. But it's important to note that some of the recent challenges that the public sector is facing actually offer opportunities. So there are not only risks posed by these challenges, but also opportunities, such as adopting techniques from the private sector when you start cooperating with, we're still on the previous slide, when you start cooperating with external providers, or making use of the entering of new and young colleagues into the organizations who belong to the Facebook generation and are familiar with new techniques and digital tools that you could use. Moving on to the last slide, I would just like to inspire you with a few thoughts on why you may or you should be most interested in improving knowledge management in your organizations. And I'm sure you will be able to extend this list and add to this list further. So just to name four recent developments that push most paths towards improving knowledge management. First, the pace of change in labor markets has increased considerably, and this increases the need for processing information more effectively within the PASS. Second, many PASS has experienced a broadening of their functions, involving an increase in the types of or the nature of services and measures you're providing, and also in your client groups. And this has increased the need for cooperating with external providers and other public bodies. And obviously, there is a challenge in how to exchange knowledge and information with these partners. Third, there are new client groups who may need different forms or ways or types of information to be communicated. And fourth, the new trend of digitalization affects the past, just like any other public body, and this creates challenges in changing the ways of internal communication, and also in the sense that clients have new expectations towards the PES on how they want to receive information. So of the introduction, and now let me invite Marie-Thérèse van Mona of Le Forum Belgium to start her presentation on how they use the PES Knowledge Center at Le Forum.
Okay, good morning, dear colleagues. And I'm glad to tell you a few words on the way we use the PES Knowledge Center at Forum. And as Agota said, knowledge management is really part of PES being adaptive, and adaptation is necessary to face new challenges and changes and crises. Now, how does Le Forum use this knowledge center? That's most important for you, I guess, because I'm not going to tell you that foreign staff at all levels consult the Knowledge Center regularly, because it's not an easy thing to attain, and maybe that's not also advisable for efficiency matters. Indeed, our staff, like most of your staff, does feel that he or she does not have enough time to devote to reading EU papers. Everybody feels that he or she is more and more overloaded by information at all levels, already internally, regionally, at the level of member states. One should not come and pile up with additional layer of information when it's already little time to process compulsory information. So we did it another way. That's what I'm going to explain to you. So PESAs are constantly challenged and work on new development, on improvements, and they have pressure as far as costs are concerned, as far as time is concerned. And this makes us think that we do not have to reinvent the wheel, and that maybe we could get inspiration and innovation from other peer countries and peer PESs. So when one colleague comes to us at the international department and, for example, is working on a new form of guidance services and would like to benchmark with others and learn specific practices on this field, our benchmarking service at the International Relations Department, incidentally, I'm the director of the International Relations Department, and we have a specific service that we offer our colleagues internally is the benchmarking service. And the first thing we do when one colleague comes with one question, for example, about guidance services, we try to find useful documents and to support him or her with these documents. And where do we find these? In the Knowledge Center in the beginning. So indeed, we search the Knowledge Center, we find reports, we find other publications from European network activities, toolkits maybe also, and whatever you find will depend on the topic. And we then search, we do not transfer dozens of pages to read. We really analyze the documents first, and we give a synthesis to our colleagues, and then the colleagues can tell us more about his or her precise interest. This is a broad overview of the topic that we first deliver, and then we search into the best practices repository to find whether one country has an experiment that could help us. So we become more concrete and we deepen in the right direction with our colleague. I'm not going to detail you what reading and work this supposes for our department, because we have to highlight some parts and deepen some others. Another usage of the best practices can also be when one colleague hears something about one practice abroad because he was in a meeting or in a conference, we can also find in the best practices fiches contact details to check whether this practices is worth while deepening for us at Forum. And we can also check with the dashboard. So we always forward document with some explanations to our colleagues. And finally, this can lead to bilateral contacts that we prepare in my team with the experts that at Forum are concerned. And before taking bilateral contacts, we prepare with them precise questions, and the bilateral contacts can be virtual, be site visits, or via Skype, for example. So, why do we do this way? Because, of course, we worked a lot in previous times to know more about the priorities of our experts internally, to anticipate, to just try to target the best possible way and the best possible studies or papers for them. But we were okay with the targets, we were okay with the priorities, we were okay with the quality of the information we transferred, but there was a big problem. It was not really used all the time. So we decided to work this way because we meet directly the right profile. If the colleague comes to us, we are timely. We have the right profile and we are sure that things can be implemented because the person has the right mandate. So the decision-making aspect is also there. Because if the person has the mandate from his or her hierarchy, the material that we give them, coming from the Knowledge Center or the Best Practices Repository, will be used directly in the short term or later in the medium or long term. But it's really used and really valuable for the organization to be inspired by new practices or to confirm directions that we want to take or to really open new ideas to deal with one challenge. But that's not all, because we also benefit from the Knowledge Center in our internal tool. We have an internal tool at Forum that is a SharePoint where we put all of the contributions that international relations does. So if one contributes to an EU-wide study and we need for that input from one expert at Forum, we put this contribution in our internal SharePoint. But when the final study is available in the Knowledge Center, we also import this study in our SharePoint. So we have reports written by the Forum employees in any international activity or inputs in one report, and also answers to questionnaires. And this helps us to answer when similar requests come to us. We have requests from stakeholders at regional, federal level, or EU level, or even worldly via waves. And we really have a good search criteria engine that helps us to go and find all the contributions of Le Forum together with the results at EU level, and this is very valuable for our internal staff because they see that their contribution was used in the framework of something bigger, and that something bigger can feed us again. So we have a virtuous circle in a way, and it's very important also for them to know that they contribute, but it's really useful for them also in the end. So this is an example of our repository SharePoint with the example of one colleague who attended a working group at EU level on the relations between PES and education, and the results of the working group were also put into our SharePoint. So in a nutshell, and in order not to take much time, since we had some technical work also, we combine, it's a threefold combination. We merge the overview of the subject with the knowledge center. We have the best practices fact sheets that give us more concrete input to our reflections and to our new developments. And we also have reports for forum that are customized in a way to subject to one situation. So this combination really helps forum internals reflections. And this systematic structured service that we offer at International Department using Knowledge Center and best practices is very valuable because it focuses the right persons, as I said. It is timely because it's when they need the information that they get the information, and we try to really adjust the information to the needs that they have, and it can be implemented by someone that has the mandate. So we can be sure that it can be integrated quite timely in our reflections on one theme and our developments. So this is how Forum uses PES Knowledge Center and best practices. It's quite rich, it's quite simple also, and I hope this presentation makes you feel intuitively how this tool is more than useful for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie-Thérèse. Now there is time for questions at 10-15 minutes. Your questions. And if I may start, can I ask you, how do you advertise this tool internally within or for your colleagues? So how do they learn about this tool?
Yeah. Well, at the beginning, I guess you have to be a bit proactive and know who is working on what and offer this service. But then when someone in the organization is happy with what he or she has found, then it's really what we call bouche à oreille in French. The one department tells to the other, and also that, of course, we have broad presentations to the steering board, the director board, and they know about it. But that's not really the best channel. I would say the best channel is to provide the service once, and then one department tells the others, and we really have directly requests that come from everywhere in the organization.
So word of mouth works best for you.
Yeah.
And is if somebody goes to a conference, is there an obligation to contact you and pass on to you any information they have learned there?
They have an obligation to draft a report. That's the only
and you receive those reports.
Yes, not systematically, but we do, because this depends, of course, on the nature of the conference. But, we do have the reports, and sometimes they heard, as I said, about things that they would like to deepen, and again, we make use of the resources that we have EU-wide and that we wouldn't have had otherwise, because as I had the opportunity to say in one meeting yesterday in Madrid, I'm not sure we at a member state level will invest so much money in EU-wide studies and EU-wide material.
Right, thank you very much. Any further questions? I thought Martina was typing, but I cannot yet see her question. Okay, let me then ask another okay, Martina has a question.
Martina, no, we do not receive questions about the PES network knowledge. They really know about it when they have a question that is a challenge for them in their daily work, and we really answer them, and we say, of course, which are our sources. And that's how they get to know what it's all about, the PES network. Martina is typing. I don't know whether I answered your question, Martina. Feel free to ask for further information.
My guess is that Martina's question was, and I think you answered it, is if you are responding most of the time, or you are proactively disseminating information?
We are responding most of the time, but once we respond and we see something new in the Knowledge Center related to one thing that we had already processed with someone, we keep them informed, and in that way we are proactive. But if we really want people to make use of all this material, it's really important that we are timely, that we give the material when they need it, otherwise they won't use it.
And can I just ask is this tool only available to your units, the international department, or it's in theory open to everyone?
Our SharePoint, you mean? Our internal SharePoint is open to all the staff at La Forêt. And at all levels, I mean, any secretary, any advisor or trainer, since we also have training staff, any manager, everybody. All the more than 4,000 people in our staff do have access to it.
And Martina has a second question about the nature of the topics that people ask about. So is it operational or strategic?
Both. Because the topics can be as broad as when do you outsource services, when do you keep them in-house. So that's quite a strategic and broader level. But it can also be about segmentation, very precise tools. And I thank Barry Kennedy with AFEPA in our network and came to us and presented tools from Ireland because we had some interesting inputs in the PEST network about this segmentation, and then we need more concrete information, operational information, and so it came to us at our request, and this is the impact of all the work. The impact can be bilateral meetings, site meetings, but also virtual, as I said, any meetings. But when it really comes to operational, it already, well, it often is a very concrete meeting, bilateral meeting.
Thank you. And I think Martina Ogle has a question. Should appear in a minute. Yes. So when did you start the initiative?
Oh, I think we tried to start it before the Knowledge Center exists, but it was quite difficult for us because we had to do much more research on our own. It was not really, what we found as information was not really geared towards PES all the time, and it was quite a relief, I think, for my team and myself to really have all this valuable material in one place, and validated material and contact information to go further. And that's really something we really could not even dream of when we started, because we really had a tough time finding good information that could be useful for us. So we started cut from the beginning when the Knowledge Center was designed.
And do you systematically monitor the usage of the system and ask for feedback on how useful or how easy it is to use it?
Well, the Knowledge Center and the repository, we use it mostly internally. One person in my team is really the one who finds it really easy to use and really works on the material before giving it to the colleagues internally. So we do not have feedback on the way the Knowledge Center works, but we know it's easy, it's valuable, because it's inside our team that everything happens. We have feedback when they get the material and they really are happy with it. They get the material from us, and so the feedback is on what they find in the Knowledge Center or what our team has extracted from the Knowledge Center and in the synthesis they made. They are the foreign staff is very happy with what they find, and they really come back to us. And so far, it's manageable. I mean, it's okay that we do not promote more, because otherwise we would need one person more in the team to devote to that kind of activity.
So the feedback that you get is typically informal, right? So people
tell
you that, oh, this was great, yes. or it's
by written. It's well, we tried to get feedback, but you know, the people then go back to their daily work, they use it, and they forget to tell us how they use it. but when we meet them in other frameworks, in other meetings and so on, they tell us. And they really make use of what we tell them. Or if they do not make use, it's a confirmation of what they thought they should do, or what they thought it should not be done. Or, well, it helps them positioning themselves in their mandate to develop something.
Thank you very much, Marie-Thérèse. I think the time is up now, so we've come to the end of the Q&A session. If you have further comments or questions, please use the I forgot the name of the platform. And continue the discussion. My past colleagues will help me. So the next presentation is by Simon Lamak from Denmark, and let me invite Simon to join us and start the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear us from Denmark?
We can hear you, yes.
Thank you.
Hello.
So this is my colleague Cecilia, and my name is Simon, and we are grateful for inviting us for this webinar to share some of our insights on knowledge management here in Denmark in the National Labour Market Authorities. Just to tell you where we are working at, Cecilia and I, we're working in the division of data and analysis in the National Labour Market Authorities. So in Denmark, the local public employment services are organized within the municipalities, so they're not directly they're not state governments. They're like municipality governments. So what we are doing in the National Labour Market Authorities, we're trying to on a more aggregate level to build up evidence about what works and to disseminate this evidence to the municipalities. And this is what we're going to tell you about today. Yeah, so we have an evidence strategy in Denmark that we follow when we are working with this subject, and it contains 3 elements that we would like to discuss with you today. And it's an evidence strategy that is describing how we work with this subject within the ministry. And we work systematically to collect, to innovate, and disseminate evidence-based knowledge on what works and for who. So this strategy contains 3 tracks. So we will go through all 3 tracks. And track 1 is how to collect existing knowledge about what works. And the second track is how to innovate new evidence about what works. And the third track is how to disseminate this evidence. Yeah. So our main focus in the strategy is to focus on quantitative analysis, that is counterfactual analysis. So we would like to show whether a treatment, an effort has an effect on helping unemployed getting a job. So we follow unemployed in registers to find whether there's a counterfactual effect on this treatment. We also use qualitative analysis, but we more use qualitative methods to try to understand the mechanism below the why question, how mechanism work, and and to understand more in depth the mechanism. So now we will go through each of these 3 tracks. So the first track in our strategy is to collect existing evidence or knowledge. So we think that there are lots of knowledge outside, not just in Denmark, but in the northern country, the European country, and also in the OECD countries. So to try to collect this evidence, what has been published in journals, scientific journals, on effects of programs or treatments, that is what we are trying to collect. And we whenever we have a new subject, we always start to see what evidence is there already been built up, so that we don't start from scratch. So this collecting of evidence from scientific journals is a really good method to build up a kind of a foundation of within an area, and then we try to update our knowledge by twice a year to look, has there been produced new knowledge within existing areas, and we would like to collect this evidence as well. So we have an example of that. For example, we have researchers in 2010, professors of Aarhus University. They did a literature review on the effects of counseling. So lots of studies on counseling from all around the world were collected, and they found a significant amount of studies that has positive effects. So 29 to 31 of these studies found positive effects, and 6 to 8 studies did not find any significant effects, but they didn't find any negative effects of counseling. So this was a very, very good information for us to know what has been built up of this research across the world. Another example is if you, for example, has a completely new area, like what effects are there of, for example, video meetings. Then if you don't have any conclusions on that, then you could do a literature review to see what has been built of this evidence across the world. So it's just a method to build up an understanding of what has been done of research on different areas.
Yes.
So this is our list of literature reviews that we have concluded, and of course we will do, whenever there's a new subject, we will always try to use this instrument of a literature review to see what existing knowledge is there. And unfortunately, these reports are in Danish, but yeah, we'll come back to that.
But at the same time, also the literature reviews are a way to see where there are knowledge gaps, so that we can make interventions that are still missing. So it's both to get an overview of what knowledge is existing and what is not.
So the track 2 is that sometimes it can be useful for us in Denmark to build up knowledge of an instrument or treatment in the Danish context. We have since 2005 been using these randomized control trials to develop new evidence on programs and treatments for various target groups. So this is a very good method to find out the effects of instruments in the Danish context. And sometimes also there are not so much research across the world on a very, very specific subject. Then you could use randomized control trials to develop your own knowledge. And we're also having an example of that. So in 2012-13 we did a randomized control trial to build up knowledge about the use of mentoring for young social benefit recipients. So the target group was young people, young social benefit recipients below 30 of age, and what we did was we randomized the target population into a treatment group and a control group. So then the treatment group, they got an offer of this social mentor, which they could use for 1 year with a weekly contact. And the control group did not get this offer. They got the regular treatment in the local public employment services. And then when we did the randomization, we could see that the two groups are completely equal in terms of observable characteristics, and also because of the randomization, they should be equal also in terms of unobservable characteristics. So the only difference in the two groups is that the one persons in the one group got the offer of a social mentor, and the other group did not. And then you can follow these two groups over time and measure the results. And what we found was a positive effect on 4 percentage points from the treatment group compared with the control group, and also there was some heterogeneous effect that some groups even had larger effects from this mentoring. So it's just an example of how to use randomized control trials in order to build up evidence on treatments in a local context. Yeah. So these are the list of the randomized control trials that we have been evaluated since 2005, and we are also right now having a few randomized control trials running, and I guess it's just a very good way to try to build up your own evidence base.
Yes.
Yeah, the third track is, of course, how now we build up all this knowledge from the literature review, what has been done across the world, but also what we do ourselves in terms of building up knowledge. How do we disseminate this knowledge? And we would like to share with you today some instruments, some tools that we have, like work in progress.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the things we do to disseminate knowledge about the labor market and what interventions works, we have this knowledge bank called Job Effector, and Job Effector means job effects. So it's a knowledge bank that gathers all scientific articles about interventions on the labor market. And we have made this in collaboration with a lot of researchers. So we get them to actually do the literature review for us, and they are the one entering all the results into this web page. So it's one page where everyone can find the information they need about the labor market. And the web page is right now under reconstruction, and we are happy to inform you that soon it will be available in English, so that all this knowledge can be presented to other people than people who understand Danish. But the webpage has two main things you can do on this webpage. So because all the studies get into this page, you are able to do a study search, and there's one place to go to find all the relevant information and studies. So you can do that on the study search page. And on this page, you can also divide it into what interventions you're looking for or what target groups you're looking for, so that you find all information in one place for the specific thing that you're looking for. But the other main thing is to find out what works and for who. So on the web page, all the studies are entered, and for each study, there can be more study results. So you find what target group you want to know something about, and all relevant study results about this group will come up and into an algorithm, and it will show the effect of a certain intervention. We're not able to show that right now because of the reconstruction of the web page, but that's what it's supposed to do. So you can very easily go in and see, so what is knowledge about a certain intervention, and it can show you if the effect is positive, negative, or there's no effect to getting people back to the labor market. Yeah. And we also have other web page that we're working on.
Yeah, because we think if we want to disseminate all this research to practitioners within the municipalities, we thought maybe there should be needs of something more interactive. So what we're trying to work on right now is like a knowledge bank for practitioners within the municipalities. And how we're doing this is trying to make it like a test for municipalities, so they can test themselves. So this is just an example, like that we try to translate evidence to concrete questions that practitioners could answer for themselves. So in our municipality, our local public employment service, do we do this in our local public employment? Yes, we do it, or partly we do it, or no, we don't do this. And then if they answer these questions, they will get a final score for how their treatment is. Is it very evidence-based, or is it only partly evidence-based? So this score is a kind of a neat way to explain to the municipalities how evidence-based their treatment are. So this is work in progress, and we hopefully this in maybe after the summer holidays, hopefully this will be into practice. So then we will have two tools. We will have the job effector, which is a tool which is a little more maybe real research, and this tool is more like for the practitioners. So we hopefully we will now have a base to disseminate all the evidence we have to different target groups. Yeah, I guess this was our final slide for today. So I don't know if there are a few questions.
Yes, thank you very much to both of you, both Cecilie and Simon, for a very interesting presentation. We're ready for your questions. I don't see any yet, so that gives me the opportunity to ask. I have a lot of questions. First, when you provide information or when you systematically collect the information from the existing studies, how deeply do you go into describing or differentiating the results in terms of various design features of a measure? So to be more concrete, do you just collect evidence on say wage subsidies in general, or do you say, okay, there are short-term and long-term wage subsidies, or short-term, long-run, or there are those wage subsidies that are combined with training, and those that are standalone subsidies? So do you do this differentiation in terms of the design?
Okay, to explain very shortly, it's not us who collect the evidence. So what we do is that we ask for researchers to do it for us, and they harness the result from the literature. So if a researcher in Belgium, for example, has published a study on wage subsidy jobs, then they will harness the results from this study. So long-term effects, short-term effects, combined effects, and so on. So the thing for us is that it should be published in high quality research journals. Yeah.
So we do have some for the literature reviews, we do have some very specific inclusion criteria for which studies we want to be included in these reviews.
Do you also have language constraints, or so is it only English or not necessarily?
Of course,
yeah. It's a good quality journal in Sweden. Would you include it in your search, or you have, could it be part
so
of it?
Usually the researcher will be able to include English literature that's written in English and Danish, Swedish, and Norwegian. If it's not in these languages, we're not able to include it.
However, these researchers, of course, how they do these research, how they find the research is they use these search machines. So they enter these words within the search machines, and then a list come up. A lot of articles show up, and then what they have to do is to try to narrow it down to the relevant research, and so if certain words are written in the title and so on, they will be shown up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's very systematically how they do it when they do these literature reviews.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a question from Gittis. Although it's not really about the tool, but it's more about how long does it take to actually influence the way the Danish paths work. So if you find that monitoring is useful and effective, how long does it take to actually be implemented?
I think it's not it's not possible to answer this question. It's it's really a very difficult question, I think, but it's a very good one. Yeah.
On the municipalities, right? Because they have high level of autonomy. And trying to.
We have 98 municipalities in Denmark, and of course we try to disseminate the evidence through these tools that we talked about, and yeah.
And can I just ask, so when you decide on what to include in the repository or not, you already mentioned that you have this screening rule that it has to be published in.
Sorry, you just have to. Can you repeat your question? The
sound wasn't good. Okay, so I'm asking if, apart from only including evidence that was published in a good quality journal, do you have further screening of the reliability of the evidence?
The screening is done by the researchers. They try to narrow it down to the relevant studies, and we try not to affect that process.
But again, this process is made by certain inclusion criteria. So studies that involve RCTs are higher rated than qualitative studies.
Yeah.
For example.
So sometimes they have studies that are not published within these literature review, or within these the gray literature.
Oh.
Yeah. The gray literature, and if they find it relevant, it can be also come into the knowledge bank.
And we have a comment from Carl, which is very useful, with a link on evidence assessment. Thank you. And you just mentioned that you are working on an update of the website. Can I ask if you have collected any feedback from the users to support this reorganization?
Okay, for Job Effector?
Yes.
Yes, so there's been a focus group interview with users of the website, where all these questions and answers are being taken into account for the update to make sure that it gets even better for the users. So yes.
So it's a focus group. Okay, I think we have covered the question from Gitis already, and please correct me if not. And do we have a, and Carl's comment is a comment, not a question. So do we have any other questions? Okay, as I said, I have a lot of questions. Perhaps I can ask the last one. At some point, you mentioned that you differentiate. So when you disseminate the materials in Job Effector, you try to differentiate the information according to the target group. If that's correct, how do you do that? So do you have different outputs or materials for, say, municipalities and as opposed to researchers?
So on jobeffector.dk, the researchers have this place where they can enter all the information, and on that, when they have enter one study, they can enter what target group the study is about, and what intervention it is about, and what the effects are. So in that way, the target groups will be presented through that.
Yeah, there are.
So the main target groups on the web page are people who are sick listed, people who are on social benefits,
Sorry,
and on.
Sorry, what I meant was when you target group in the sense that your audience, so your readers or the users of Job Effector, like municipal experts or frontline staff or researchers.
Job Effector, the target group of users are researchers and policymakers, and also participants, but mainly researchers and policymakers. Where the other website that Simon was talking about is more targeted people who are working in in municipalities.
So what we could for is that when we are a little bit further with these two tools, disseminating tools, we could maybe once again come and show you the final tools. It could be like in the third or fourth quarter of 2019, and then hopefully they will be published. And then we could provide you with a tour within the final tools, and I think it will be much clearer what they are about and for whom and how to use them. And also we have, as Cecilia said, an English version of the Job Effector. It could be very neat for us to show you how also people from other countries could use this tool.
Thank you. There's a question from Martina. Can you see it? The websites are fully public?
Yes, so the two websites are not public yet, but they will be very soon, and we would like to inform you when they are and when they're available in the English version as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you again for the excellent presentation. I'm afraid we need to move on to the final step, which is just a brief wrap up from me. And well, as usual, we have talked about many things, and I won't be able to wrap up all of it. But let me just highlight 2 or 3 issues that I picked up from your presentations. First, that it seems that there is a huge challenge in the information overload, and that PASS staff have limited time, and on the other hand, there is this wealth of literature and evidence. So it seems that the systematic collection of the information and user-friendly tools, especially search tools, are extremely important. And as mentioned in the Danish presentation, it seems that there's a huge potential in sharing this work of collecting the information and making it available to a broader group of users. So your initiative to offer to have the website in English is hugely appreciated, I'm sure, by all potential new users across Europe. I think another challenge for the PASS in particular is how to ensure that this wealth of information is relevant for the users, so that they can find what is relevant for them, and they find pointers to navigate in this wealth of literature, so that they don't spend a lot of time in finding what they actually need. And last but not least, let us stress that the Knowledge Center, the PASS Knowledge Center, already seems to be a very useful tool, and the Belgian experience or Belgian practice in making systematic use of it is probably something that is interesting for all of us across Europe. Let me finally give you a bit of information on the next steps, and especially the toolkit. So as I suppose most of you know, we'll produce, Klaus and myself will work on a toolkit on knowledge management, integrating these good practices that we have just seen, and also giving or providing basically a set of tools that are relevant for PASS on how to develop your knowledge management systems. And while working on this tool, we very much welcome your input and feedback on all the good practices that you currently have in your PASS, as well as your needs and interests in the areas that you find most challenging and most important. So even right now, or using Circa BC, we would very much welcome your inputs and feedback on what to include and which sections to elaborate more on in this toolkit. I think the outline of the toolkit has already been shared on Circa BC. If not, we'll do that soon and ask for your feedback on that. Okay. Do we have any comments or final reflections, either from the Commission or from PASS experts?
Hello from Brussels, Martina here. Yes, firstly I want to thank a lot the speakers, Marie-Therese next to me, and also Danish colleagues, and it was very useful, I think. And last week we've been to Madrid and we had an informal meeting with several heads of PASS, and it also there came out that the knowledge management is an issue and a challenge, and that there is a huge interest to improve on this in the PASS, and also to bring the knowledge we create on an EU level into the PASS. So I think that was a very, very useful kick-off, and I only can encourage you to go on with the discussion on the collaborative platform, CRKPC, and invite you to contribute if you have interesting approaches and examples. So I'm sure it's many PASS having tools in place, and yeah, which might be useful also for the toolkit, which we will share as soon as it's published. Yeah, so thank you from my side, and yeah, I will give back to Agota.
Thank you very much. I suppose we're a little bit ahead of time, but we've reached the end of the webinar. So thank you once again to the presenters and all the participants, and also for bearing us with the slight technical difficulties. Thank you very much again, and have a very good day for the rest of the day. Thank you. Sorry, not to forget. Yes, please do continue the discussion on the collaborative platform.